A French police officer has died and another has been gravely wounded in a new shooting in the southern Paris suburb of Montrouge. Police said it was too early to draw a connection between this latest shooting and the attack on the Paris offices of Charlie Hebdo, a satirical newspaper that had repeatedly made fun of Islam and Mohammed. The killers burst into an editorial meeting at the paper, shooting 8 staffers in the head, execution style, and 4 others, including 2 police officers. The killers reportedly shouted, "Allahu Akbar." God is greatest, and the Prophet is avenged. France has been alternately cracking down and coddling radical Islam for years now, and there's always been a fear that something like this could happen. A stunned France was in mourning Thursday as police and security forces hunted for the 2 suspects still at large. The third suspect, an 18-year-old, turned himself in to police. French Prime Minister Manuel Valls said there were several arrests overnight in the hunt for the brothers Sharif and Saïd Kouachi. Both were born in France. The massacre at Charlie Hebdo triggered demonstrations of solidarity around the world. Tens of thousands gathered in Paris carrying signs that said, "I am Charlie." This man said, "We're doing this for freedom of speech. We're mobilized, we raise our pens, and we won't get down." The head of France's official association of Muslims, Dalil Boubakour, was in damage control mode, saying the killing wasn't done in the name of Islam, but was in fact a blow struck against all Muslims. The massacre will only strengthen far-right National Front leader Marine Le Pen, who said France must stop living in denial and stand up to Islamic fundamentalism. Germany, too, is seeing a populist backlash against Muslim immigration. The organization Pegida is seeing tens of thousands of Germans turn out for demonstrations against Muslim radicalism and immigration. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. Our CBN terrorism analyst, Eric Stakelbeck, is with us now. Eric, I understand there are pockets of Muslims in Paris and places throughout France where the police don't dare to go. They have their own little enclave.
Yeah, Pat, we see these no-go zones really throughout Western Europe, but in Paris in particular, the suburbs, they're surrounded by these high-rise housing projects, Pat, where many, many Muslims live. As a matter of fact, France has the largest Muslim population in Western Europe. People might not know this. 10% of the French population is now Muslim. And Pat, here's the problem. Much of this Muslim community in France, as you mentioned, is segregated from the indigenous France. And what we've seen is this Muslim community become radicalized in these housing projects outside of Paris and in other areas around France. And we have seen at least 900 French citizens travel to the Middle East to join ISIS, and many of them, Pat, will one day return home. Now, the people who carried out this horrific attack yesterday, we don't know if they were linked to ISIS. They apparently said that they were working for al-Qaeda. But no matter who they're working for, the problem is Islamic jihadists on French soil, and it's only going to get worse. This is only the beginning.
Eric, did these men travel to Peshawar or someplace in Pakistan or in Afghanistan or Iraq or any of those places in the Middle East to get further training?
And not that we know of yet, Pat, but here is an interesting wrinkle there. One of the men, now 2 of these shooters, they were brothers. The older brother served time in a French prison back in 2008 because he was recruiting people to send to Iraq and fight U.S. troops. Not clear whether he went himself or his brother went, but he was a terror recruiter who was recruiting Muslims to fight overseas. Now, he served time in prison, Pat. He was sentenced to 3 years. He only served 18 months, and he was released early. And now we have what we had yesterday.
Well, how does this apply in the United States? I'm just appalled at the government. You've pointed out very cogently that, for example, 1,000 pages out of the FBI manual were removed because of complaints from the Arab American League, whatever it's called here. Is that a problem that we will not identify the enemies we're dealing with?
Massive, massive problem, Pat. At the end of the day, the Obama administration does not mention the word Islam in relation to terrorism. Yesterday was clearly an act of Islamic terrorism. They won't say that, will the Obama administration? They'll call it violent extremism or generically just terrorism. President Obama himself, for instance, says that ISIS, the Islamic State, is not Islamic. So we have Western leaders burying their heads in the sand, number one. Number two, reaching out to Islamists, the people who have the ear of the Obama administration, Pat, and you and I have discussed this many times, are foot soldiers of the Muslim Brotherhood. These are radical Islamists who are advising this White House. So you have a big problem here when you can't acknowledge the enemy because the enemy is actually advising you.
Well, you know, al-Sisi in Egypt made a very cogent statement. He said, look, this whole thing, when the whole world is afraid of Islam, when are the so-called moderates going to wake up, or will they ever wake up?
Pat, I'm here in Washington, D.C. I'm still waiting for that million Muslim march on the National Mall. We still haven't seen it since 9/11, right? When are they going to wake up? Pat, if ISIS hasn't awoken a slumbering, moderate Muslim community around the world, I don't know what will. You have ISIS hacking the heads off of men, women, and children, and we still don't see a massive, moderate Muslim uprising. I think there's a few reasons for that. I think one of them, quite frankly, is fear. They're afraid their head will be next on the chopping block. I don't see it happening. At the end of the day, in el-Sisi, you mentioned that speech, Pat, excellent, incredible speech by the Egyptian president, calling for basically a reformation, a revolution in Islam against the jihadists. I don't know what the tipping point's going to be there. Again, if it hasn't happened yet, with things like we see yesterday and we saw a few weeks ago in Pakistan with the Taliban killing 150 school children, if it hasn't happened yet, I don't know when it is going to happen, but at the end of the day, if Muslims don't stand up and root out the jihadists, this war is going to continue for a long time, and the West is not showing the will to win it.
Eric, thank you so much for the work you're doing. Keep it up, buddy. We
Thank you,
really
Pat.
appreciate you. Eric
Thanks.
Stakelbeck, ladies and gentlemen.